We are at Inverness Castle and I've got Liam here, and we're going to be doing something a little bit different today. We are going to be bikepacking the North Coast 500. The North Coast 500 is a 530 mile or 800 kilometre route around the northwest coast of Scotland, and we will be bikepacking and wild camping the entire way, hopefully. I've got a pretty average bike and I'm a pretty average cyclist, and this is also my first bikepacking trip. Nothing special about my bike whatsoever. I've got an old Soarer, it's a steel bike. The whole setup is about 18.5 kilograms without food or water, of which about 7 kilos is my camping and electronics gear. Liam's setup is a little bit lighter, marginally by about a kilo or so, and he's a bit more of a stronger cyclist. I've done a couple of 100-kilometer rides on my road bike in about 4.5 hours, so I think I'll be okay with the distance, but obviously it's another story with the bikes fully loaded as well as the hilly terrain. We're aiming to complete the whole route in about 8 days, so cycling about 100 kilometers or 60 miles a day, although we do have an additional day should we need it. The spare day actually came in handy this morning. We were due to set off at around 6 a.m, but my gear cable snapped, so we went to Tyso Alpine Bikes, and the lovely people there managed to help us get my gear cable sorted. Anyway, it's about 11 o'clock now and we are going to be setting off. Kilometers in and feeling good. Kilometers in, still feeling good, and the sun's out. We've cycled 70 kilometers now, and we stopped at the Midge Bite in Agneshin for a spot of food and water. I was mentally prepared to cycle about 50 to 60k, so the last 10 kilometers was a real push. It's a pretty hot day as well, and I've only got 2 bottles with me, meaning I can only carry about a litre of water, and I kind of ran out of water in the last 10k as well, which didn't help. But it also means that after this we've only got about 10 miles left. It's 7 o'clock and we've pitched up just outside Lochcarron. This is my Lanshan 1 Pro and that's Liam's Lanshan 1. The pitch isn't the best. We walked around this little headland bit for probably about an hour looking for somewhere better to pitch up, but honestly there's just nothing. There's long grass, there's ticks around, and the terrain is pretty rocky, so it's not the best pitch. And what I've done is I've used my pedal to hook out one of the additional guy lines as well. We rode for 106 kilometers, so I think that's about 65 miles. First day of the North Coast 500 wasn't so bad. Other than the last 10 kilometers of the first stint before we got to the cafe, it was actually okay. The last 35 kilometers definitely felt very comfortable. I guess the food as well as the rest that we got at the cafe really helped. I guess it'll be interesting to see how my back and my legs feel tomorrow. Tomorrow's definitely going to be a tough day. We're going over Bilac na Bau, which is about 630 meters, and it's known as the longest road climb in Britain. I don't think I've got the legs to do it in one go without stopping, but we shall see. But anyway, I'm going to head back into Lochcarron by foot to get some food from Spa before they shut, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow. Good morning, it's 6:50 and I've been up for about 30 minutes now. It was quite cold last night and I'm using the Aegis Max quilt because I need the compression of down because I don't have much space on my bike. I slept with my fly open and there's still a bit of condensation building on the inside and on the outside of my tent, but I think that's probably because of where we pitched. We pitched on a bit of land that's quite wet, and in fact when the tide was really high last night it was only a few meters away from our tent and we were actually quite worried. But anyway, gonna have some breakfast and then get on the bike. Day 2, North Coast 500, let's go. There's 550 meters left to climb to the top. I'm feeling okay, but Liam's left me behind. He's far too quick for me. I'm in my 34-32 gear. My pace is definitely not fast, but it's quite sustainable for me. 380 meters to the top. I've yet to stop, except to let cars past. I'm definitely feeling how hard it is now, and it's only going to get steeper apparently. 260 meters left, bit of a flat section to recover from, and still not stopped, but the steepest bit is coming up. 234 meters to the top, and I've stopped. I can't hack it, it's too much for me. It's too steep and the going is way too tough. To be quite honest, even walking and pushing my bike up this section is quite hard. My face is dripping with sweat and I've got a slight headache because I think I'm exerting myself too hard. Serious respect to any cyclists who can cycle up this road. I made it up to the top of Loch Eriboll in about an hour and 10-ish, and how long did it take you?
About 55.
Okay, very nice, quite a bit faster than me. There's quite a bit of hiking and walking involved. I think where I really gave up was after the initial bit. After I stopped for the first time, I turned the corner and just saw how long there was left to go and how steep it was, and at that point I just mentally gave up. But this is the top now, and I'm looking forward to the descent, which should be fun. It's 11:45, we've done 30 kilometers so far, and we're now having an early lunch at Applecross. We've done 70 kilometers now and we're in Shildig. We wanted to get some food from the coastal seafood bar, but we got here too early. It's only 4 o'clock, so they're not serving food until 6 o'clock. So what we've done is that we went to the village store and grabbed some snacks to hopefully keep us going. The 40 kilometers around the peninsula was quite difficult. A lot of it was just up and down, and there's quite a few steep climbs. I'm feeling absolutely shattered, but we still got a little bit more left to ride today. Part 3 of the day, and we're heading out of Shildig. We are going to head towards Lochs, see where we can camp. It's 6:30 and we've stopped for the day. It's between Torridon and Kinlochwy, and we found this nice little spot that's pretty flat and protected from all sides by the wind. Not that we're too worried. In fact, a little wind would be quite nice because the midge are just starting to come out now. I've pitched up, Liam's still mucking about. We've done 70 kilometers and 1600 meters of climbing. It's just a little bit under what we like to do distance-wise, but climbing over Loch Eriboll was pretty difficult. So we're going to call it a day here, and I guess just shoot for a longer day some other time. The bit after Shieldaig wasn't so bad, especially the cruising between Anat and where we are right now. It's pretty much like a flat road, and we were taking in turns being in the front, so it was okay. The 40-kilometer section between Applecross and Shieldaig along the coast and the peninsula was quite tough. There's quite a lot of steep little short climbs, and I guess my thighs haven't fully recovered after Bilac Nabal, so it's very tough. But anyway, today hasn't been so bad. I think the pacing was quite good, the way that we broke up the whole day, and loving the campsite. Good morning, it's 7 AM on the morning of the third day. I've been awake for about 30 minutes now, just eating and doing some changing and packing up. Last night was pretty windy, but that means the tent is completely dry, and I burrowed myself into my Aegis Max, and the material is pretty windproof, so I actually slept okay up until maybe 6 o'clock today, when I naturally woke up a few times. Last night for dinner I didn't have a lot to eat. I had a packet of chicken bites and a few bars, and I had 2 bars this morning, so I'm really hoping that there's something open in Kinlochwy. Also, my thighs have started to hurt a little bit. It's not too bad just yet, but I can definitely feel the ache. Today we're aiming for another 100 kilometers, so we're heading through Kinlochwy and then heading along the coast to Gairloch, Polwy, Dundonald, and then hoping to find somewhere to camp before it rejoins the main road, because it's about a 300-meter climb right at the end of the day that we want to tackle tomorrow morning instead. Breakfast in Kinlochwy.
So we just did 2 pretty tough climbs. It's not the overall elevation that gets you, it's the maximum gradient, and those are pretty high.
50 kilometers in and we made it to Polwy. Unfortunately there's no hot food here. We're being told that the closest hot food is in Gairloch, where we came from, or we have to wait until 5 PM when they're actually serving. So it's gonna grab something from the village store and then head on further north to see if there's a cafe or restaurant open further up. We made it to Drumchalk and made it up to the hotel that's meant to be open, but it looks very closed. So I don't know what to do, because it doesn't look like there's much else along here for the rest of the day today. Even though the climb is a lot shorter than yesterday's Bilac Nabal, this 140-meter climb is still quite hard. I don't think I can do this without the tailwind behind me that's pushing me up. We're having to be quite careful with the descent because there's a super strong crosswind here. One puncture, no hot meals, and we're doing the big climb today. The weather's meant to be horrible tomorrow, so we're doing as much as possible today, leaving a little bit less for tomorrow. Very thankful for my 34-32 gear. I'm not that fit, but I managed to make it to the top without stopping, slowly but surely. It's 7 o'clock and we've stopped for the day. We rode 104 kilometers today, which minus all the faffing and circling back looking for places to eat, makes just about 100 kilometers towards the North Coast 500 route, which means we're well on track. I found this ideal little spot by looking on Google Maps satellite view, and it showed that there was this nice little area that looked pretty flat. So we rode up the road another kilometer to see it was actually really good. So we decided to pitch here. Yes, it's a little bit close to the main road. It's probably only about 10 meters behind me, but I think after maybe 8 o'clock, we really shouldn't see any traffic coming through here, so we should be okay. I think we've done quite well, especially because I started the day with achy thighs. We rode 100 kilometers and I think about 1,300 meters of climbing, especially considering that we haven't had hot food apart from breakfast in Kinlochwy. Liam suffered a puncture earlier and we did see a spot of rain for the first time as well. It wasn't so bad today, but I think looking at the weather forecast for tonight and tomorrow, it's going to be pretty bad. So I'm quite keen to have a shorter day tomorrow with a lot of time spending Ultralight in a pub or something. I think a lesson learned for us is to stop in the bigger places for food rather than pushing on, even if the timing doesn't quite suit. I think we should have perhaps stopped in Gairloch instead of pushing on to Poolwee, even though we got to Gairloch at around 11:45, which is slightly too early. But anyway, it looks like the rain's about to roll in. I can feel a little bit of drizzle already, and it looks like Liam set up his tent just in time. I'm gonna head to bed and eat a few bars as dinner, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Good morning, it's 7:30 on the fourth day, and it's been raining last night and it's still raining right now, so we had a bit of a lie-in. Today, like any other day, we're aiming to do another 100 kilometers, but because of the weather we might do a little bit less. The weather forecast has rain for the entire day, but I'm hoping that it will come and go. My thighs are more achy compared to yesterday for sure. And from what I understand, the bit between Ultralight and Loch Eriboll is meant to be one of the toughest sections on the North Coast 500, with a lot of climbing in the 24 miles between the two.
We rode the 29 kilometers from where we camped down to here in Ultralight in an hour and 5 minutes, helped massively by the descent that we did into here. I'm running on empty. I haven't really had any proper food since about 3 o'clock yesterday in the afternoon. I had maybe about 6 bars between then and now, so I'm definitely looking forward to getting some proper food here. Meal number 2 in Ultralight. I love this road between Ultralight and Loch Eriboll. It's so beautiful. We made it to Loch Eriboll and we are at the cafe and bunkhouse for a bite to eat. I slipped and crashed about 10 kilometers ago and didn't hurt myself too badly. Just got a cut on my hand, but the one of the straps from my saddlebag did rip off in the fall, and I tried to mend it with needle and thread to sew it back on. But my needle, as you can see on the table, has actually snapped. So now I'm either looking for another needle or some super glue to hold it. That's the bit I've sewn so far before the needle snapped. I'm wearing my saddlebag like a messenger bag because the Velcro won't stay on without the loop attachment. But good news, I managed to find some needle and thread from Spar. However, because it's raining quite heavily, I don't want to sit outside and stitch it. So I'm going to cycle like this until we hit the campsite and fix it there. We also decided to take the A road to Ultralight instead of the coastal route, because with the weather like this, I don't think we're going to be able to enjoy the coastal road at all.
It's absolutely miserable out there. The rain was pretty heavy and the riding was just terrible. So we decided to stop at the first place that we found, and it's now 6:50 and we rode 85 kilometers today. I actually enjoyed the majority of today. The descent into Ultralight was pretty cool, and then the ride from Ultralight to Loch Eriboll through the back roads was really nice. But this rain has put a damper on the morale and the mood. On the bright side, I did manage to pick up a whole packet of needles, so hopefully I'll be able to mend my saddlebag ready for tomorrow.
It's 7:45 on the morning of the 5th day, and last night was really cold and rainy, so I couldn't open my fly, and the condensation on the inside of my fly sheet was quite bad. I wiped it down several times with my towel, and there's still condensation left on it. I think a lot of that is down to where we pitched, because we pitched in a hurry last night. We weren't able to find the best spot because Liam had similar issues with his Lancashire 1 normal. We're gonna carry on heading north today, but before we do that, I need to get into my cold and wet cycling gear, which I'm not looking forward to at all. I managed to stitch on the loop and the buckle onto the outside of my saddlebag. It's not a neat job, but I'm hoping it will hold for the rest of the trip.
It's a beautiful crisp morning, but the wind chill makes it pretty cold, and my hands and feet especially are feeling it. Just did a 200 something meter climb, which warmed us up. It's just the limbs are a bit cold now. We're just leaving Carl School right now after having some breakfast at the hotel, and it's starting to drizzle again, but our next stop will be Dunnet, hopefully.
We had something at the cafe in Inverness, but now there's a hailstorm passing through. It should go over in about 30 minutes, so we're waiting it out in this bus shelter.
I'm quite pleased with the decision to leave Dunnet when we did, because it looks like we avoided all of the rain clouds.
We stopped for the day now at the end of Loch Eriboll. We probably rode for about another hour after we left Inverness, covering about another 20 something kilometers. So that puts us at 106 kilometers for the day, meaning we've got less than 330 kilometers left to go. I think today's been pretty successful. We managed to cover quite a bit of ground, and we managed to get all the food that we wanted as well, and most importantly, we only got a little bit of rain, and we managed to avoid the rain in the evening. We managed to keep our cycling clothes dry for the day, and I think that's going to be really useful going into tomorrow morning. Tomorrow's weather forecast looks to be pretty cold. It's meant to be about 3 degrees Celsius in the morning, so I would love to get dressed inside my tent in some warm and dry clothes. This is pretty much me done for the day. I'm not going to have too much for dinner because I already had a baguette, which was really good, from the cafe, and 2 sausage rolls and a can of Coke from the shop. But what I do need to do is I need to do a bit more patching. The saddlebag strap has now
come slightly loose. So I just want to make sure it's all ready to go for the next 330 kilometers.
Good morning, it's 8 AM on the morning of the 6th day. I couldn't really sleep well last night. A, because my sleeping power was at an angle and I'm a side sleeper, so I kept slipping off. And B, it was freezing cold last night. At around, I think, 3 AM there was frost on the outside of my tent, and it only got colder until about 6 o'clock. But thankfully now it's getting a little bit warmer and we are just sitting on our riding clothes to warm them up before we find the motivation to put them on. I just went away to wipe away some condensation, and this is some of the frosting on the inside of my tent.
This is probably the third steep climb I've had today, so I'm just spinning up slowly but surely in that 34-32 gear, taking my time. Just ticked over 61 kilometers for the day, and we've climbed 1100 meters. It's been quite a hilly day. Spent a lot of time in my 32 cassette. My Garmin watch is telling me that there's only 8 more climbs left off this entire trip, but I'm not sure if I believe that. I've heard that the north coast and the east coast are a lot flatter than the west coast, but we've still got 260 kilometers left to go. Cruising the last couple of miles into Thurso now. The previous 30 kilometers has been pretty flat, to be fair. We're now in Thurso. We picked up some food from Lidl and stopped for some fish and chips for dinner. We've had our fish supper and we're heading out of Thurso now for somewhere to camp, and it is very, very cold. I've got all of my clothes on apart from my rain jacket and my sleeping clothes, and I'm still practically shivering even though I'm cycling. It's 7 o'clock and we've pitched up in Dunnet Bay. We rode 106 kilometers today, which means we got 225 kilometers left of this entire trip. We were aiming for about 110 kilometers today or further if possible, but having looked at the Google satellite view, there wasn't anywhere to camp between here and John O'Groats, and John O'Groats is another, I think, 13 miles away from here, so it's probably a bit too far for us to get there before sunset, which is happening right now. Today's been pretty good, I think. The pacing has been pretty good, the food that we had was decent as well, and the weather we had, other than being slightly too cold at times, has been really nice to us. So here's to hoping that this evening is not going to be too cold. In fact, I'm just airing my tent out right now and going to have another bite to eat before heading to bed. Last night was probably the best sleep I had on this trip. The pitch was pretty flat, it wasn't too windy, there wasn't too much condensation, and best of all, it wasn't freezing. According to a BBC article, the night that we woke up with the frosting on the tent was the coldest September night in 20 years, and it was recorded to be -5 in a place that wasn't so far away from where we camped, so it wasn't really a surprise that I felt so cold that night. It's only 7 o'clock and I'm halfway changed, and we are looking to get packed up soon. It's a bit of an earlier start for us because we are hoping to crank out some miles. We're hoping to do about 125-130 kilometers, so we'll be headed around to John O'Groats before heading back down south towards Wick and beyond.
just left the campsite at 7:30, and the first thing I noticed is that my knees started hurting as soon as we started riding. We're now at John O'Grills. Just got another 200 kilometers left until we get back to Inverness. We've left Wick and cycling towards Helmsdale, which is 35 miles away, and that's where we're going to stop for dinner. We're cycling on the A9, which is very busy, but not very interesting. We're about 15 miles in, and we've encountered an almighty headwind that's making the progress really difficult. Just climbing the other side of Barrisdale now. It's a pretty steep climb. I think it averages 9%. It climbs 133 meters over 1.3 kilometers. The descent was pretty scary but fun. It was very steep and very twisty, but the road surface was also pretty good.
Stay mute, your English pig.
We finished riding for the day and we've pitched up. We're probably about a couple of miles south of Brora. We are right by the sea, and over in the distance is Dunrobin Castle. We rode 125 kilometers today, which means there is 95 kilometers left to finish tomorrow. I'm pretty pleased with the progress we've made. I think we cover some good ground. I don't think today's riding has been the most picturesque. I did like the views of the coast, but a lot of it is just following the A9 and the view weren't spectacular. I wasn't a fan of riding along the A9, to be honest. I didn't really feel safe for the whole day. Between the really high crosswinds and the dangerous behavior of some of the cars, where they overtook us really close by, or they overtook us on solid white lines, around blind corners or hidden summits and dips, didn't really feel safe riding on the road alongside them. It's 7:40 AM on the 8th and hopefully final day on the North Coast 500. We are just about ready to take down our tents and pack away our bags. We woke up this morning to some pretty good conditions. The sky's looking blue and pretty clear. There's a few clouds in the sky, and I don't think we're forecasted any rain for the rest of the day, so fingers crossed. For our first stop of the day, we are going to be cycling 30 kilometers south to a town called Cairn, and we are going to hopefully stop at a cafe in that town. From Cairn, there's only 65 kilometers back to Inverness. The route profile for today looks pretty flat and achievable. There's a couple of climbs, but nothing that is too steep. And unfortunately, we will be following along the A9 again for the majority of the day. We've made it to Cairn. The road was quite flat and the coastal way was actually quite nice, but we weren't able to cycle really quickly because my right ankle was hurting and my left knee was also hurting. But we are going to grab some well-deserved breakfast now. We both had a pretty big breakfast in Cairn and rested for about an hour and a half, and now we are on our way back to Inverness. The wind's really kind to us today. We lost the headwind, which is really helping us with our average speed, and now we're heading back to Inverness through some of the back roads rather than the A9. We're on the home stretch with less than 50 kilometers to go. This stretch of road on the National Cycle Route 1 is really nice. There's very few cars, very quiet, and absolutely no camper vans. I think this is probably the quietest road we've been on so far. It's a nice road to ride on. The surface is good and it's relatively flat. The scenery looks like something that I'd find around Edinburgh. Here is our final climb, number 70 out of 70 on this trip. 213 meters of climbing. Let's go. That's 70 out of 70 climbs completed. My knees are absolutely on fire, but it means we got a 22 kilometer flattish cruise back to Inverness.
This is Liam's second puncture with 10 kilometers left to Inverness. A bit of gravel went through his old tyres and punctured the inner tube.
Alrighty, that's us back at Inverness Castle, which is the end of the North Coast 500. It took us 8 days as predicted, and it's been a pretty good ride. We had, what, 1.5 days of rain, which I think, given where we are, is pretty lucky. We had a little bit of drizzle the other days, but we managed to dry off before the end of the day. That was also my first time bikepacking. I enjoyed it to an extent, but I'm not sure if I'll do road cycling and camping again. I enjoy doing kind of day trips when I'm doing road cycling, and I enjoy camping, but I'm not sure I enjoy doing the two together. I find a lot of the times I just don't get the views I want when I'm out there from the road. But maybe something like gravel biking would be better to me, like cycling along a fire road or a forest track, and camping, I guess, in more remote places might appeal to me a bit more. I'm pretty impressed with how I managed to complete the trip and only had to walk 3 hills. The one was Loch Eriboll, the second one was on the same day when I was really knackered, and then the third one was climbing out of Dunnet on a really steep apex turning point, which I just felt that was safer to walk and I couldn't get any traction on my back wheels. I think that's pretty good going, given that I haven't trained for this and I'm a pretty average cyclist. What's your favourite part of the North Coast 500?
Probably just the west coast, sort of like some of the descents were pretty amazing. I wouldn't say I have like a specific like favourite like section or day, but yeah, the west coast I think is the best coast.
Would you recommend the North Coast 500 by bikepacking?
Yeah, maybe not in September though.
What would you do differently?
Well, yeah, I think warmer, and then just like picking a week where it's definitely not going to rain, because that's probably my least favourite bit was camping in the rain. My favourite part was between Ultralight and Unapoo, going through the back roads in between the mountains. That was extraordinary. The landscape was amazing, and even though the weather wasn't great, I still really had a good time. My least favourite part is probably the last 2 days. I didn't really enjoy cycling along the A9. It's such a busy road, and I guess especially yesterday with the crosswind, like I said, I never really felt safe at any point. But yeah, North Coast 500, completed it, mate. Righty, quick gear review. The bike I used is a Charge Plug 3. Nothing special about it. It's a steel bike weighing about 11.5 kilograms all in all. It's running a Shimano Sora group set with a 50-34 on the front and a 11-32 on the back. The side entry gear cables on the Brifters are pretty annoying because it got in the way of putting the handlebar in and out. But because I only had to put it in and out once a day, it wasn't actually too bad. The saddle I used was a Charge Spoon. It was pretty comfortable most of the time. The tires I used for this trip is a Schwalbe 1 Performance, 28mm. They work just fine. I had them at 85 psi, no punctures, and felt very grippy. The Podsax handlebar bag worked just fine, completely waterproof. If I had to nitpick, it would be these straps don't really hold it as tightly as I would like it to. And when the bag
rubs against the handlebar tape, it makes like a squealing sound, but other than that, they're absolutely amazing. The Podsax frame bag works pretty great as well. It's got all of my electronics inside, and I'm also using it to carry my trekking pole, which I use for the Lanshan 1. The Ross wheel saddlebag that I got from AliExpress works fine. It does have the bits where I had to patch it, but I think that's more because of the crash than poor workmanship. It's not waterproof, but it's also not meant to be waterproof. I didn't really like the top tube bag by Vord. It's not very secure. It's just attached by a piece of Velcro here, and I actually lost my Victorinox because of that. Both Liam and myself decided to go with flat pedals for this trip. For myself, the reason was because I knew I would have some difficulties with some of the climbs, so I wanted a pair of shoes I could walk in. And also because we were wild camping, we didn't know how long we needed to walk our bikes, what sort of terrain we needed to walk our bikes over, so we decided to play it safe and go with shoes that we can both cycle and walk in. And because I don't have any mountain bike SPD pedals, which I could also walk and bike in, I just decided to go with flats, and it worked absolutely fine. In terms of camping gear, I used the Lanshan 1 Pro and the Aegis Max Wind Hard Tiny Quilt. The Lanshan 1 Pro I actually really liked. I enjoyed having the extra space for getting changed into the cycling gear in the morning. That was actually really useful. The condensation is as I would expect. The conditions weren't great for minimizing the condensation, and I did have to wipe it a few times, but it was manageable. The Aegis Max quilt was warm enough for all of the nights, apart from that one night, which we read about the day after, that was meant to be the coldest September for 20 years. That night was a little bit cold, but I still managed to sleep through it, and that was meant to be as cold as -5 degrees. I really like how compressible the Aegis Max quilt is. I'm able to fit that, the sleeping pad, all of my sleeping clothes in the handlebar bag, which saves me a lot of space. My top 3 favorite pieces of gear for this trip are: 1, gloves that kept my fingers and hands dry and warm. Secondly, the buff that kept my neck and face warm on all the descents. My third favorite piece of kit is the 32 tooth cassette that kept me going up all of the steep hills. But anyway, that's about it from myself and Liam. As always, thank you for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.